Hello, friend. How was Mike Lunney?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. If I was doing any better, I'd be Derek.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. So, if you can't hear it in my voice, we had our first big um, bout of really cold. I think that your part of the world actually got some precipitation within the last couple of weeks.
Just a little, but not near like what happened on the coast.
Yeah, and my friends in the Metroplex were kind of landlocked for a while,
Yeah, they were.
but it kind of got kind of got to the old pipes there. So, y'all be patient with that this morning. Um, But, man, we're it's amazing to me in life, and I'll use holidays this way, that we talk about things in the future, and the future, and the future, and the future, and then all of a sudden we realize it's past.
Mhm.
And so, I know a lot of educators enjoy their winter break, whatever their district calls it, that they, look forward to a couple of weeks to not have to listen to sir, 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 mister, ma'am, hey, Mrs.,
Yeah.
hey. And then before you know it, here we are at springtime or spring semester. Let's put it that way. And so I'm just curious. So you already starting to get some, since we're into the spring semester, and for those listening to other places in the state of Texas, spring is when it's largely focused on concert, sight reading, the sit down band, and the
That's right.
evaluations and the things that go along with that. I'm just curious, are you already getting calls? Or people already reaching out to you as we move towards that evaluation season?
Yeah, I tell you what, my docket is pretty well full, and I feel so honored that there's people out there that still want me and see me as the bright and shiny penny that can come and help out and do things. And there'll come a time I probably won't be the bright and shiny penny, but I'm going to keep working hard to be as shiny as possible.
But
But I'll go
I'm gonna
ahead.
say this about you. You are a smiling, upbeat, positive person, so I totally understand why people enjoy having you come in, and the kids probably enjoy having somebody that's, not hyper focused on every, single nuance of what's happening, and you're there to encourage and to build up, so I understand why they call you, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
But
well,
you're
I
saying,
appreciate that.
and it's funny that you almost put that in like, I almost did the SVU, dun, dun, on the docket, so
Yeah, that's right.
it's like legal
Go, go,
cases
go,
stacked
come.
up.
Yeah, that's right. I'm like a public defender of musicology.
So you are getting are you full? Are you rolling or
Yeah, I'm pretty much I'm full as a retired I laugh at that, as a retired music
wink, wink?
educator. Yeah, I'm about as full as I want to be. I've got to have
Okay.
time for my grandsons, you know what I
Sure.
mean, and go play with them a little bit and do that. But I do have a list. If anyone wants to contact me, of some, especially in this area that we live in this West Texas area, of clinicians that are available that have reached out to me and said, "Hey, blah blah blah." We just talk about it. It's a small
Sure.
world. So I
Sure.
can definitely give some direction to that. If I can't help you, I bet I can find someone who can help you. And they might even be better than me. So,
You stop that.
yeah, that's right. They actually know all the fingerings, so it's a cool thing.
Are you
Um,
nationwide, Mike? If somebody from Washington State says, "Hey, Mike, I heard the podcast. You wanna come work with my band?"
Oh, I wish it was. They make, airline reservations and have the limo pick me up at the airport and have my entourage with me, but
Paging
no,
Mr.
no,
Lunney.
I just get in my Nissan Rogue and I shoot across and dodge oilfield trucks usually, so it's
That's
not as
funny.
glamorous as you'd think. It's not supermodels and $100 bills and, speedboats.
Well,
It's a Nissan Rogue and a lot of dirt.
I've been on those broken pothole-filled
Oh
West
my
Texas,
gosh. Yeah.
Central Texas roads, so
Yeah, it's crazy, crazy. But yeah, I do get the calls, and I really appreciate and I think it's intelligent, the ones that get someone in early, and then if the best possible scenario, I think, is to bookend it, where it's like someone come in January and just kinda work through with the band and the director of how the rehearsal's set up and the things we're looking at stylistically, and then, things of balance and blend and tuning, etcetera, and then have them work through the music for a couple of weeks or a month and a half, and then get invited to come back and then see the progress, and then maybe do the things that we kind of sort of traditionally think of clinicians doing.
the cleanup
Fix the
kinda
notes,
yeah.
give us some ingenious idea that makes this ultra musical that they hadn't thought of, but and to repeat all the things the director's already said the whole semester,
Sure.
except that I'm to the kids, I'm brilliant because I'm new. And the director, they just tuned them out just like we did our parents when we were teenagers.
And
So
I
I
think
I think there's a lot to that.
it's also wise on the director's part because I'm absolutely in agreement with you. Early is better
Yeah.
before bad habits set in,
Mhm.
but also to bookend that at the end because, as you've talked about before, sometimes we hear what we want to,
Oh, yeah.
or we just start ignoring things that we've heard it so many times it doesn't offend us anymore.
That's right. We trick ourselves.
Right.
We hear a bad entrance at the beginning of the ballad so many times in a row for the very first note that we start to consider that normal. And then someone else comes in and goes, "Whoa, stop. If we breathe together, we might actually play that together." And on the first note said, and I've just gotten used to it and I've been there and I wanna not be overly dramatic, but, I've had lots of clinicians come and work my band, and in a way, it's kinda humiliating. Yeah, because it's like they point out these things, you think, "Oh my gosh, I should have known that." Big thing I try to tell all the directors I kinda help and mentor is, try to push that emotion to the side because 'cause we've all been there.
Sure,
We've all
sure,
been
sure.
there where or when the kids all look at me when Dr. Dorothy would work my band, and they look at me like, "How come you've never mentioned that, Mr. Loney?" It's in their eyes. And I'm thinking, "We've talked about that like 50 times,
Sure,
but
sure.
obviously I didn't teach it, because to teach it, there has to be action on the other side."
I didn't get that full communication, but,
That's right. I
um,
just taught to a brick wall for that one.
okay. Well, uh, I absolutely agree and encourage folks to get to put that in your brain. But what about some of us who A, don't have access, or B, maybe it's too late, we hadn't thought about it. But as we start teaching this spring semester and start doing some of this, listen, I don't want to belittle marching band because I love it. I would do it, do it, do it, do it. But I think concert band, the setting is a much more intimate
Mhm.
and much less forgiving for musicality.
Yes. And it's the educational part. I mean, I hate to say the quiet part out loud, but in marching band, we are educating. But man, that's a performance based do this, do this. We can do New World Symphony and the kids not even know who Dvorak is. Yeah,
Right, 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 right.
it's just like march and play. Let's go, kids. We're running out of time. And I loved concert band because we could stop and we could say, "Hey, we've got this much time. Let's look at this
To
and
me,
let's make
marching
this
band's
better."
kind of like American Ninja. Here's the
That's
obstacle
a good
course,
example. I love that.
fighting the weather, fighting wind,
I'm gonna
fighting
steal that.
all the, and there's a
Yeah,
lot
we're
of
hanging by our
physicality to
fingertips.
it.
Hanging by our fingertips.
So much physicality to it, and not that concert band or the concert setting doesn't require, or orchestral setting doesn't require as much physicality. Specifically, if you are creating a wind instrument tone
Right.
or good sound, but you're not marching backwards at 160 beats per minute either. So
Yes, exactly. So what I've come up with is just kind of not to sound like a preacher here, but a couple of points. Let me go through my points and
yeah,
things that I've noticed when judging bands, not just going to clinic, but judging bands. That are the things that I would really impress upon a director, whether they're young or old, to kind of keep thinking about as we go through this season, and some possible remedies for things.
okay, well, let me be your young band director because
Okay,
I have about as much experience as a never year teacher.
never
So,
year. That's a great word. A never
so
year teacher.
I'm just gonna throw stuff on the stand and see what sticks, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's all we do. Just make them play it over and over and over again. Kind of in a tangent, Bill Woods, a great mentor of mine and a wonderful man, he's now passed away. But he used to say, you could take just an average intelligent group of kids and you could have them play through the music over and over and over, and not say one word to them. And said, I bet they'd at least make a two. Said you have to teach them into a 1, or you have to teach them into a 3, 4, or 5, and I think there's a lot of wisdom to that statement. You can just say,
I see
"Play it
it.
again, play it
I
again,
see it.
play it again," because no one
Make it
wants
better
to.
this time. Make it
Yeah,
better
and
this
then
time.
and if they just do it over and over again, they'll start to develop usually a better tone and better tuning because that's just uncomfortable to have bad tone quality and bad tuning and bad blend and bad balance and bad articulation. And but hopefully we'll be there to help teach them into a in a first division competitive wise. But in a just a music education situation, we just want them to be good musicians, you know. We want them to understand what it is. And I still get out my trumpet at least once or twice a week and practice for an hour each time. I don't have a ensemble that I go to play in. I just like playing jazz standards, and I like to play old pieces I played in college, you know, it's fun. It's a
Right.
moment where I can play my horn and be a musician, and I would hope that we can instill more of that into every single student if possible.
And listen, I don't wanna belittle, because I have huge respect for music educators, but I think it almost speaks to the fact that, young people who want to make music, who are there because they enjoy making music, have a certain amount of aptitude already there, whether they know it or not. They know bad.
Yeah, they do.
They may not know what to do about it, but they know bad.
Yeah,
So, anyway, I kinda got us going down that road a little bit, but let's get onto your list. Tell me what I
yeah.
need to know as I stand in front of this group of hungry, eager sponges waiting to learn the beauty of music.
Alright.
You didn't even
Let's
laugh. I was
yeah.
trying to
That
exaggerate a little.
that was so dramatic, I didn't know what to do.
Where's he going with this?
Yeah, I was going, "What are we doing?" You know, sometimes you take me for a roller coaster ride there, Derek. Now I think the very first thing that I always push upon, any ensemble, I did the 3rd all-region band. You know, they had 3 all-region bands in this particular region, and the first thing we worked on, and the band did a great job at the concert, really good kids, was tone. You know, tone quality. Um, I feel like a good friend of mine said this. I'll just read this quote. If your kids don't play 16th notes, then you can pick a piece without 16th notes. If your students don't play well in the key of D flat, just don't pick a piece in the key of D flat. But if your kids don't play with a good tone, your entire performance will be bad no matter what you do.
Wow.
You know, if there's no tone, it
Absolutely
just
true, though, right?
yeah, and I use this as a thing when I do all region bands or sometimes I mentor, I'll bring my trumpet and I'll play the a part of concert etude, you know, class 1. Yeah, yeah, you know it. You've
Yeah,
played it, haven't you? Okay, so I've got it memorized. It's like it's in my brainstem, okay? I mean, there's lots of music I've forgotten, but for whatever reason, I just really love that piece. But then I'll play it for 'em, like, with my teeth together. And
okay.
then I'll say, "Was that enjoyable to listen to?" And at first, they don't know what to say because they don't wanna insult me, and I said,
Sure.
"Was that enjoyable to listen to?" And they go, "No." And then I'll play a really pretty, ballady kind of lyrical thing with 3 notes.
Yeah.
And I said, "Was that nice to listen to?" And "Yeah. Yeah." And I said, "You know what?" Said, "I've just taught you a valuable musical lesson. You can play 3 notes with beautiful tone, and people will appreciate it. You can play all the 16th notes in double tongue and high and low as you want to with a crappy tone quality, and everyone's will clap just because they're your parents."
Wow. That's funny. That's true. But
And it's great if you can combine the 2, because then I go back and play that opening, to that piece, or I do part of the Aratunian with a good tone quality, well, as good as I can produce at this age, and with good technique, and then I tell them, so that's when both those worlds come together, and that's when you really rise to that level as a musician with
so
good tone quality and good technique.
help an ignorant person here. Uh, Interchangeable words. Yes or no? Characteristic sound, tone.
Same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and the way I kinda process this for them, I tell them quite simply that, and, this overly simplistic, but if you're a brass player, every bit of lip that's inside of the cup of the mouthpiece must vibrate.
Well,
It
that makes
must
sense.
buzz. Okay? Your oral cavity must be open. You can put your lips together and yawn with the back of your throat. That makes your throat open. Um, and there's vertical sounds and horizontal sounds. Vertical is like oh, tone. Horizontal sounds like like West Texas drawl. You
Yeah.
know, our tongue's real fat in the back, and we kind of
Spreads, right?
chuck it off. We spread it. You know, so that's kind of what we talk about that. Then we talk about air pressure. Um, that if I'm playing fortissimo, it's like blowing through a big piece of PVC pipe. And if I play piano, I'm playing through a McDonald's straw of
Right.
airstream.
Yeah.
And it's the same air pressure. It's not less air pressure. It's just a narrower stream of air. And then woodwinds, there's a fast, vibrant tone quality on flute is produced by fast air and focused over the embouchure hole. And reed instruments, every bit of the tip of that reed has to vibrate. Okay, and your embouchure has to be set, and it stays the for our purposes, not as a professional saxophonist, but
Right.
the embouchure stays the same. Does that
Sure.
make sense? A trumpet player, the embouchure changes with the lip, getting tighter or looser, but for a saxophone or a clarinet, oh my goodness, just lock it in, and then use air pressure. So just in that little couple of minutes, that's probably if bands would approach things with that idea, they could improve their tone quality really quickly, and it would also increase their ability to tune better because you can't tune a band with bad tone quality.
Uh,
It's almost
Absolutely. I
impossible.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Everybody's making a different sound.
I've seen and I did this my younger years, I think my first couple of years in Electra, when I would go through and tune the band, in the warm-up room, at UIL, you go down the line, so just make everybody panic and have anxiety attacks, I don't know why we do it that way. Um, but, you gotta keep, oh, ah,
Uh,
oh, but, the tuner says they're in tune.
right. I get it. I get it.
And even the kids start to look at each other like, This isn't right." Said, "There's something wrong here." So once you get good tone, you can get good tuning. Intonation has the word tone in the middle of it,
Right.
you know?
Agreed.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kinda how we do it. Tuning is also a skill that must be addressed every day.
I
And
agree.
that's a problem we have sometimes in our field, is we feel like we run out of time, but you gotta make time, even if it's just a few minutes, to tune correctly or just to have 2 kids be in tune with each other. Just, "Hey, you play your note, you play your note. Okay, y'all adjust and fix it."
Right.
Don't tell
Listening
them
for
which
the
way to go.
waves. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, the wah, wah, wah. I call it listen for the wah wahs. The wah, 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 wah. And so the wah wahs will get faster as you get closer to being in tune for just a brief second, then all of a sudden it'll flatline,
Right.
where the wah wahs disappear and just explain it. I've even gone as far as my beginning band. We had a little, I call it a college dorm room refrigerator, they had in the front of the band hall because the band hall was away from the offices and keep some bottled waters. But I'd put my trumpet in there for the whole. I said, okay, guys, here's my trumpet in the refrigerator. And they're like, "Mr. Lunny's lost it. Did he take
Right.
his
What's
meds
wrong with
today?"
you? Yeah.
Yeah. And then at the end, because at the end, I'll take it out and then I'll try to tune with them. I'll get another trumpet player in my class and I'll play your G and I'll play mine. Of course, mine's like a half step flat.
Right.
There's no way I can fix it. By the time they figure out how to tune to me, they pulled their slide out like this far. And then I go, "Is this a good situation?" And they're going, "No." I said, "What's wrong?" I said, "It's the temperature." So we talk about that,
Right. Physics. Yeah.
it's yeah, just simple physics of, hot and cold. But, especially in tuning, they hate doing this at first, but have them sing,
Right.
you know,
I
and
get
they
it.
hate it. And there's tricks to that. I
But
mean,
there's
I've
so
had
much
them.
physical stuff that goes with that, the vibrations and the
Yeah,
um
yeah. And
learning
just
to
knowing
hear your brain goes, ah, that's where that's supposed to be. Right.
that's right. And you're aiming at the target with your bow and arrow instead of just firing the arrow and then hoping that it goes somewhere close to the target. It's one of those moments, and sometimes, especially with younger groups, you have to kind of trick them into it. So what I'll do is we'll talk about counting in a little bit, but but when I count using the right pitches. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3. Whatever you just we do the counting system, and I say, "Now count back for me," and then we'll do the letter names if it's, like instruments, and even if it's not like instruments, I have them do the letter names,
Sure.
so you got all these different letters going on, but then they don't think they're singing. Isn't that funny? And then they
Right.
just do it, and then all of a sudden you kinda then you say, "Okay, now just hum it." Now hum it louder. Hum it so loud that the tip of your nose
Wait, vibrate.
tingles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden I go, "Open your mouth," and they all go, "Ah," and they got this big vocal sound, and I always tell them too, so my voice is not a good vocal quality voice. I'm just trying to match pitch, and that kinda lets them off the hook a little bit because "Well, Mr. Lunny sounds that bad, and he's not gonna laugh at me," and they're right, 'cause,
Right.
if I was, an amazing vocalist, it could probably be intimidating, but I'm certainly not intimidating when I sing.
Hey, two quick things that I want to add to this and get your thoughts.
Okay.
Number one, what we're talking about. I think we discount sometimes how amazing the human brain is.
Yes.
And it does all these computations and factoring it. I'm just talking about pitch.
Yeah, yeah.
It can learn pitch. We hear about perfect pitch. You can teach pitch.
Yeah, you can.
And the second thing
At
is,
least really strong relative pitch.
sure,
Yeah,
you're in the
yeah.
ballpark.
Yeah.
And the second thing is technology. I didn't have clamp-on mics when I was in high school even.
Right.
But I see so many if you bought a classroom set of tuners and mics, they don't do you any good unless everybody's using them. And so everybody should, at least in rehearsal, have that tuner clamped on at any given moment they can see pitch, right?
Yeah, and it definitely gets you in the ballpark, and it's a great teaching tool, but we wanna also make sure we use the tuner that God gave us.
Sure,
You
that's
know
what I
what I
mean.
mean?
Our
Yeah,
brain is
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and the brain will pick up on that. It'll pick
Right.
up on that. In fact, you wanna go old school. When I first got to a lecture, there were about 13 or 14 chairs in a back storeroom, and on the back of those chairs had a little mallet that hung down, and on the back of the chair, it had a B flat and an F, like bar, like a bell
Oh,
bar.
wow.
And I'd asked Howard Smith, who was the director emeritus there. He taught there since, World War II was over, and he
Wow.
taught there for, like, 30 years, and then I ended up being there about in the '80s, but he would kinda come up to the band hall, and he was already in his '80s at that point. He'd come up
Sure.
to the band hall, and, yeah, I asked him about those chairs. He goes, "Oh, yeah, we didn't have the big Strobocon tuners or the Peterson tuners." Said, "Those didn't exist." Said, so he goes, "I had these made." And said, so I'd say, "Okay, we're gonna tune to a B flat," and every kid on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th row would lean forward and grab that little mallet hung by the string and go, "Ping," and he said it would just resonate in the band hall. They'd have all these chimes going at the same then they would tune to that, and so, we've always been searching for technology, and that way that was technology, and we've gotten better at it, and I think it's great, man. These tuners, we can clip them, we can play. It's a pain because you got tuner cords that short out and you got batteries to replace and kids drop them and and every once in a while kids will try to they'll take them. I don't think it's nefarious. They just kind of end up with them. And I always thought, if I lose a few, I'll just call it a business loss. If I lose a few tuners, at least I've got a tuner at home.
Right.
so, so I'm not going to lose on that. But you are exactly right. The brain, if you as a director will impress upon them the importance of that skill, their brain will activate.
Right.
If you don't tell them, I it's unbelievable the amount of bands I hear at contests that you can tell they just play out of tune horribly every single day and not one correction's made because everyone on stage just acts like this is just like how we do it. And I'm not talking about a minor tuning discrepancy. I'm talking about half step differences between instruments, and they just, well, I guess that's how it is, So we've got to force ourselves to reach out of our comfort zone because a lot of directors, tuning is something they don't want to work on because it's like peeling an onion. There's layer after layer of what we do with our embouchure, our airstream, alternate fingerings. It just goes on forever. So they veer away from it.
And there's times that I think sometimes we say, "I'm gonna fix this," and we start fixing one little thing, and it just grows.
Yeah, or the rest of the band goes into chaos.
And and your brain goes, "What have I started?"
Yeah,
But
just get out the march, guys. Let's just
yeah,
play. And I've been there, man. I've been there, so I'm not throwing stones, but I've been there. So, but I've had enough good mentors that came and just beat me about the head and shoulders with a Manhasset stand and said, "You idiot!" Said, back in the day, they just called you an idiot. "You
right.
idiot!" Said, "Just you've got to do this, this, and this, or your time is wasted."
They
Yes,
meant that
sir.
in the best
Yes, sir.
possible way.
Oh, they loved me. They did.
But let me ask you this, though, would you put this at the foundational block of things that on your list? Is this
Yes.
probably the big one?
This is job 1,
Yeah,
even in beginner band.
I agree.
A beginner band can play with a good tone, a good beginner band tone.
Once they
They
know
can
what
they
that
can
is.
yeah, they can play, they can tune, even with their beginner band tone at that time.
Sure.
And you know as well as I do, you get some beginners that have a better tone than some of my better high school players. It
Right.
just comes almost natural to them, because they understand what sounds really good, and they know what to do with their face and their airstream to make that replicate on their horn.
And so I will say this, we've had discussion polite discussions before about leadership, whether it's taught or natural or instinctive. But I do
Mhm.
think there are some people, they put an instrument to their face and they just make a good sound.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt
Whether
about
it's
that.
whether the embouchure is just natural for them or, physically everything's perfect for and I've told you before, as a trumpet player, I could make pretty sounds. I didn't
Mhm.
practice enough to be great technically, but I could always make a pretty sound.
Mhm.
But do you, having said that, do you say, "Okay, so and so demonstrate this for us,"
Yes.
and let everybody hear the great sound? Now let's all match that without elevating that person too much or making everybody resent him or her because, well, you know, I can't be that good or he likes him better. You know what I mean? But we
Yeah.
can use people with good tone as an example.
And I'll tell you a good way to do that, especially in any band, um, do a call and response thing where it's a concert B flat scale. We're gonna do 4 legato quarter notes, and each day you just pick a different kid to model, and not to model, but to be the leader. Who wants to be the leader today? I wanna be the leader, and the kids figure out pretty quick. And then you tell the band to mimic their tone quality as close as possible, just like an impersonator with their voice,
Wow, I
and,
never
uh
thought of that.
and
Yeah.
it does it where sometimes some of the leaders don't have great tone quality. And there's a powerful lesson to be learned because the kids will mimic. They'll close their teeth and they'll tighten up the back of their throat and they'll get their tongue real high in their mouth on a low concert B flat and they'll make the exact same sound as that kid. And that kid kind of goes, it's like, why are there 35 trumpets playing with a mediocre sound? They don't say it, but then the next week when you say, "Hey, Leroy, will you be the leader again?" Sure. And all of a sudden their sound is much better because
But
no one said a word. No one said a word. No one criticized anybody, but they just realized that their tone did not match the other people. And all the trumpets figure out, how do you make a bad sound? And that's a powerful lesson because if you can do something incorrectly, then you can do it correctly.
right, I agree. And
Yeah.
again, non-band related example of that. When I was a kid, we used to go to the railroad tracks and get that baling wire, that like half inch, 3/4 inch wide flat strap that they used to
Yeah.
wrap around things.
Oh, yeah, I
We
know what you're
we
talking about.
cut it to a length, fold it in half, drill a hole through it, and make whistles out of them. Those
Yeah,
really loud, shrill whistles.
yeah.
But you had to put your mouth the right way and your tongue in the right place. God knows what else we were putting in our mouth with those baling straps, but
Yeah, you lived.
but until you found the right physical configuration for your mouth. Same thing, I do it without the strap. I can whistle louder than any other human I know
That's cool.
just by shifting my tongue to a certain place.
Yeah,
And you know the when you go outside to call your kids kinda whistle is what I'm talking about.
right.
And people, it's less common now for people to do that, but we all tried to do that when I was a kid, and I have people turn around now going, "How are you doing that?"
Yeah,
But it's just a matter I it's an interesting exercise to explain what I'm doing with my tongue and or my lips to make that happen.
right.
So it doesn't seem to make sense, but I'm telling you, if you will demonstrate the tone you are after, the human brain and people are smart enough to start going, "What do I do with my," or even if they ask, "What am I supposed to do with my embouchure to do this right?"
Right.
You can that's when you can talk about the corners. That's when you can talk about not puffing your cheeks or, how do you create the right airflow
Yes.
or the intensity to emulate what you're hearing.
Yeah, and when teaching woodwind and brass, you're exactly right because you have to rely on them to start experimenting because you can't see what they're doing.
Internally, right.
Yeah, you can't see inside their mouth, and I say that because I've worked a little bit with orchestras when I did some of my master's work, and, it's so I'm not it's easy to see what's going wrong with an orchestra because you
Everything's
see it.
external. Right.
Everything's external. Yeah, you see how they're holding the bow, and you see the speed of the bow, and you see the pressure of the bow, and, you see all that, so you can just, like, look at a violin section and go, "Hey, can you play that part for me?" I said, "Yeah,
Right.
bow speed needs to be faster right here because everything bow speed is air." You know what
Right.
I mean? For a wind player.
Agree.
So it's you've got to but we don't have that luxury in band because, I don't know, it's just scary because you can't see anything that they're doing. You can keep describing it and you can keep helping them, but they've got to have that natural instinctive, experimentation
Yeah.
of, if I do my tongue this way, yeah, we don't want them like playing out of the corner of their mouth and trying to experiment, but, within confined parameters, they can
Right.
experiment and get a better
But I'm
sound.
also telling you that when those waves stop and it locks, that's one of the greatest rewards and
It's
teaching
cool.
moments there is, yeah.
It really is cool, and my tuning slide's slick enough, and it's probably slicker than it should be because I use it in teaching. You know what I
Right.
mean? I say, "Hey, Derek, play your G," and I'm gonna play my G, and you don't do anything, I'm gonna tune to you, so I pull it out, and I literally do it like a trombone slide. I just
Mm.
push it up,
That's
and all the
funny.
kids' eyes go, "Woo!" 'Cause you're right, there's something naturally, rewarding about hearing, where it's like sounds like one big trumpet sound or one big trombone sound and not 4 trombones,
It's almost like that THX at the theater
Yeah, it is.
when it finally locks.
Yeah. You're
Listen
exactly
to me,
right.
everybody's going, "THX, what's
Yeah.
that?"
What's a movie theater?
That's funny.
Oh, that's a
But
thing of the past. Yeah.
if you've ever seen those I love DCI videos, I've told you it over and over and over again. But they do so many of the things you're talking about. I hear them singing the pitches, then they play it,
Mhm.
then they intentionally play
Well, I do that with a
wow.
lot of marching bands. That's easy
Yeah,
to teach with the cluster with the hand
right,
signals and everything, and so you hear the just chaos of everybody being a half step apart
right,
into a concert F chord,
right.
and so it just opens up, everything. You know what I
Well,
mean? It's just really a cool thing.
I've kind of belabored this because I do think this is probably the biggest point for
Yeah,
spring teaching
and
is
if push
learning
comes to
tone.
shove, we can divide this into 2 episodes, and that's
No,
not a
no, no.
problem, but I really appreciate you doing that because I wish we could get everybody on board that tone is the most important thing. When I did that little region band about a week ago, um, we had 8 hours total of rehearsal. I spent the first 45 minutes on tone quality before we even looked at the music,
Right.
and I could tell the kids in their minds, they were thinking, "Are we gonna get to the music?" And
This
I
is
knew
what real
that
musicians do, kid.
yeah, and so but it paid off. I mean, that band sounded and because I just kinda not that I did anything with them, I just kinda opened up their brains and their ears to where they were like, "This is job 1. This is
Right.
this is pretty much all this guy cares about is our tone qualities," and so it became part of their mission, and then they played the snot out of the music. I mean, it was, like, great because if you can play with a good tone, it's technique is not a big issue as long as the music fits the kids.
Sure.
You can't give them the Hindemith Symphony and say, "Okay, region 3rd band, let's crank this up, man. We've got 20 minutes of Hindemith."
But that's where we
It
do
just
our
can't be
job.
done.
What's
Yeah,
realistic for this group at this time,
yeah,
but we're gonna play with good tone.
and the difficulty of the music is so unimportant. Now, I know we're in a state here that they have grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, solos are classified, and it has to be because we've got to have a certain amount of criteria, but I've never gone and I've done and I keep track of 'em, I've done 35 all-region bands. That
Wow,
was the
okay.
35th all-region band in my career, and I've never at the end of the process had a parent come up and go or a director, "Man, how come you didn't play harder music?" No one's ever said that.
Right.
They've always, said either gave a compliment or said, "Well, the kids did the best they could. Thank you, Mr. Lunney." "Bless all your hearts, including you, Mr. Bless your heart, Mr. Lunney."
Yeah, but go back to your first quote.
What was that? It's been
The
too long
first
ago.
quote from your friend
Oh,
of
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Grandma Susie doesn't care about 16th notes in the key of concert D flat. They just want it to sound purty. Has to
right.
sound purty. If it
But
sounds
by the same
purty,
token,
it's a good band.
I don't care how many notes you play if they sound bad.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times I've written my own quote on UIL sheets that said, "This band plays with such a good tone quality and such good balance and blend, even your wrong notes sound pretty."
That's actually funny. That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
it's almost like y'all don't sweat much for fat people kinda moment, I always call that a backhanded compliment. "Hey, Mike, you don't sweat much for a fat guy."
Okay, don't make me laugh today. That's funny.
Okay. But, it's meant with all love, and I think every band director who's read that went, "That's a compliment." Even when you have a wrong note somewhere, it's such a pretty wrong note. It just
Right.
sounds gorgeous, and I can forgive that.
Right.
If it's bad tone the whole time, you can play every note perfect, and it's still not gonna be a first division. There's no way to have a good ensemble without good tone quality. Now,
Okay.
some groups are in progress as they're rising in the levels of their ensemble, but at UIL, we have to call it how we see it, like an umpire. We don't have any choice.
I'm gonna ask you a quiet part.
Uh-oh.
As an adjudicator, You could tell if a band's been taught how to make good tone,
Yeah, you can tell if they play a concert F on stage.
and it kinda puts you in the mind state of, "Okay, I know I have a good teacher here."
Yeah,
Maybe that's an overstep, but you know what I mean? They do
or at
so
least
many
this issue's been addressed.
they do so many fundamental things right. Does it help you overlook a brain fart by the first trumpet because whatever, he just played the wrong note?
Mhm. It does. It does for me, but, talking about quiet part out loud, that's I think one of the most common questions I run into in adjudication is, how do rainbows happen?
Right.
How do you get a 1, 2, 3 on stage when it's the same performance? And that's part of the process. I might award a band a first division because they have beautiful tone quality, balance, and blend, but they make some mistakes. Where another band director might feel that that's egregious. Tone quality's meant to be there no matter what. We don't give you credit for that. And so
Right.
you messed up this and you did this and you had a little tempo problem here. Therefore, that's going to be a 2. And another one might say, said, "Your balance just doesn't fit in my mind the way I think a band should be balanced. That's not the tonal quality I want from a band." And then you made mistakes. So that's a 3.
Right.
It's the danger if we take human opinion and we pretend like it's all important, and it's not.
Okay, and I gotta be super careful when I say this too. Hopefully, you can't just walk up and say, "I wanna judge bands," and they go, "Okay." You have to go through a process to become an adjudicator,
Yes, you do.
but I there's so many different schools out there in different regions, and
That's right.
it's interesting. Ok I'm just gonna
And
walk away from that.
people from other states
Right,
that show up, and there's some people that just hate the use of a metronome. And so if a band varies in tempo, it doesn't bother them as much. Where maybe someone of the Eddie Green school of music, that would bother them tremendously. And I respect both sides. It's
sure,
just how we were taught to be musicians.
I get it, but back to the rainbow thoughts, sometimes you're just dealing with,
3 different
different
brains.
different people. Yeah,
Yeah, dealing with different people. And it is hard. I've gotten a 1, 2, 3
yeah,
with my own ensemble before. And it is hard. You're holding those sheets going, why? How? I don't get it. But
right.
now as I've gotten older, I do get it. I still think there's probably more we could do with more training. There's more we could do with the thing. But we're constantly working on it at TMAA here in Texas, trying to make ourselves a better product as adjudicators. It's a job that's never going to end, as far as trying to improve, but we're trying,
I'm gonna
we're trying.
throw one more thing at you too because this hit my brain too. One of the favorite things I hear, and it happens for me, I tell people all the time, I I'm just busy. I've got so much going on. So here's my thought. You're not too busy to have good tone.
Right. If
If you
you're
do nothing else, you're not too busy to
Yeah,
make
and
good
usually
sounds.
we get too busy because we pick music that's too hard. So we're
Right.
chasing notes. We're chasing
Right, but
notes, and we don't have time to work on tone, balance, and blend.
Mike, we
And
blame our administrations, we blame all the
oh
administrative
yeah,
stuff we
it's
have to
always everybody
do,
else's fault. Yeah.
but you can't be too busy to teach characteristic tone.
Right.
So anyway,
It's job
I
one, man.
I think we're starting to beat that horse at this point, so
That's right. That horse needs to be beaten. It does need to be beaten. Okay. The next one on there is blend and balance, which obviously goes hand in hand
I'm gonna
with
say
tone
that's
and tuning. Um, it's a The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So in other words, you have to work hard at the things you're preaching. You can't just tell a band, "Hey, let's have good blend and balance." That means you kind of blend together and then the right people play the right volume. All right, let's go on now.
a
It
move.
just has to
Yeah,
be a constant thing of working chorales, creating the sound, and this is a cool thing, creating the sound that is your band. There's certain recordings I can hear that are people I know, and I can pinpoint that's this program. And I don't
yeah.
it's never been announced. And, I think the biggest compliment that, Bill Woods ever gave me was the fact that he said, "Man, Mike, I can hear a recording of your top band, and I know that's Mike Lunney's band." And it's not that it's right or wrong. There's a certain balance and blend we have in our head that we want the band to emulate. And it's just like running a mixing board. I always tell the band, said, it's like the band, not to belittle it, maybe it sounds that way, but it's like I just run a big mixing board, and every instrument out there is a different channel. and it's my job to you've gotta trust me. Do this, do this, do this, please, please do this. Now let's
Right.
play it incorrectly. Let's have the smaller instruments, cut off a millisecond late and have all the bigger instruments cut off just you know, a millisecond early, and we'll do that release. And I'll say, "Did that sound good?" "No." "Why did it sound good?" "Well, it doesn't echo." "Well, that's
Um,
right." Said, "But you know what? That sounds like 9 out of 10 bands I hear at contest." So "Doesn't that sound familiar?" They go, "Yeah." And I said, "Now just quite simply, the smaller the instrument, small instruments cut off just a millisecond early, bigger instruments cut off a millisecond late." Just a millisecond, almost barely perceptible. And then they'll do it, and all of a sudden it'll just resonate in the hall. And I said, "Well, why are you okay with playing it the crappy way? Why are y'all doing that?" You know what I'm why are you satisfied with mediocrity when
now
you
that I
have the
know that
ability to be
you know.
incredible? Yeah. So I'm not gonna allow you to do that anymore. And said,
Right.
and better yet, you should not allow yourselves to do that. If you play trumpet, flute, or clarinet, you better not be hanging over. If you're a
Yeah.
tuba player, you'd better hang over. That's the last sound I want to hear, is the tuba sound in the hall. That's the only way acoustically it works. It's the only way. Um, but, working chorales, just simple chord exercises, pull something out of the music, work on balance and blend.
I love
Um,
chorales. I just
yeah,
love
chorales are
chorales.
great. And we used to, as part of our sight reading, there was an old book that had a black and white cover called 42 Bach Chorales.
Right.
And, you remember that book?
Well,
Yeah, it's
we
kind
had
of a fairly
16.
thin one.
It was a kind of a
Okay.
pamphlet, but yeah.
Yeah, but it was really great because it was part of our sight reading because those things were hard. Not just balance and blend, but man, they all of a sudden registers got weird. They went into weird keys and stuff. So we would do different ones each day just as part of our chorale and then part of our sight reading to do it, you
I think
know?
I've told you this before. In high school, that's what we would do in the end zone. We would play a
Yeah.
chorale on marching field
Right.
just to because we did it every day and we knew what it was supposed to sound like, and it would let us hear it outside. Anyway, don't
Yeah.
wanna box
No,
you out.
no,
Sorry, sorry, sorry.
no, there's a lot of layers there, and good stuff. It's because you want your kids to do something normal at the football game that they know that leads to the show, and then you want them to establish that tonality in the band that they know how to establish, then they carry it to the field. And it's so much more brilliant than just,
But even
let's
at
do a
contests,
pre-show with a recording, and have nothing. Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty nutsy move because everybody's listening to you. I mean, I'm not talking about a football game. I'm talking about marching contest where everybody
Yeah,
can hear what you're doing.
that's
And
right.
if it's not done right, they're gonna go, this is gonna be bad."
Yeah.
But, uh, let me ask you this real quick, if I may.
Okay.
Pyramid of sound, is that still a thing?
Yeah, no doubt about that. Yeah. The pyramid balance situation, I think it hasn't always existed. Isn't
Okay.
that crazy? Because,
Yeah.
Doc Haddon, who played tuba in the John Philip Sousa band as a 17-year-old, was the guy that helped pay for my college.
Wow. Okay.
So Doc Haddon, we'd go over to his house, and he did a scholarship fund, but he had wax cylinders of the John Philip Sousa band. Isn't that
That's
interesting?
crazy.
And he'd crank 'em and play 'em, and he'd call us chillin'. He'd go, "Okay, chillin', never play a march too fast. Okay, chillin', never play a march too fast." He looked like, Colonel Sanders, had the
That's funny.
goatee and the white shirt and the bolo tie and the gray
Right.
hair, and yeah, he's really a cool guy, and all his stuff when he passed away went to his family in California, so I don't know where those wax cylinders are, but those were actual wax cylinders there on Philip Sousa band. My tangent on that is the fact that he told us that, pyramid balance is a new thing. At his age, that was a new thing because Francis Macbeth kinda prophesied it, you know what I mean? Came out and
Sure.
made all kinds of things about it. He said, "Man, in John Philip Sousa band, everyone played the same volume. That's why those marches are so dadgum hard to play now, because the piccolo player played as loud as the tuba player."
And I would
The
agree
it
with
was
that.
it was block balance. He goes, "We it
Right.
was block balance. No one was allowed to play softer than another person." And that's why and those things are scored that way. And then we try to manufacture them into our pyramid balance, and that's where the problems start to
Right.
happen because all of a sudden the melody disappears, we can't hear this or that. But yeah, pyramid balance is definitely a thing to kinda teach that the lower the sound, the more prominent it has to be in the acoustics, you know? And, we can quite simply teach that with almost every band hall has some sort of sound system,
Sure.
and you can play some tune that the kids enjoy and then put all the treble on and take off all the bass, and then you can do it the other way, and then you can kinda mix the 2, and then finally you'll kinda mess with it and tell them to raise their hand when they like the balance. You know what I mean? And then finally, hands will start
As the bass
so
gets louder?
and that's it, and that's
Yeah.
it. And, what I use to teach balance with bands, it's stolen from, oh gosh, Brian Owens. Brian Owens. I saw him do this one time. He's a great band director, but, called the balance wheel. It was simply I hold my hands up, and then I have the band play whatever chord it is. If I turn it this way, I want more lows, less highs. And I've turned it this way, I want more highs, less lows. Make sense? So the
Sure.
band has a visual thing to watch, so they're watching me do this. That's hard to get in the screen.
I
There we
get
go.
it.
Okay, so we do that, and they boom, they do it immediately, especially like an all-region band, and I can make it completely out of balance, and then I can go and I can find and I tell them I'm gonna find the spot, and it might be right here where the hands are if I can get my hands in the right place. Yeah, where it's like
Sure.
whatever it is, and then I tell them. Then even at the concert, like before the concert, I'll look at them and I'll go like this with my hands, and they know immediately what that means, and the sign language for this is get an open sound.
Right.
If they get a strident sound in the middle of the concert, I start doing this, so we can adjust balance. But before you get balance of instruments according to families, you know, the number one thing that I see that sticks out at contest is not near as much the balance, but it's hearing individuals in the section, that their tone quality doesn't blend in. So
Got
that
it.
blend has to happen. Otherwise, you can balance all you want to, but if you have that kind of raspy sounding saxophone or that kind of bright tinny sounding trumpet or a blighty tuba or a clarinet with a weak embouchure, just kind of spread sound, that kid will stick out. So you've got to work to try to make those better each day. And just kind of just listen to a section play a part and then tell us, hey, I need to help you here. Can you do this, this, and this? Okay. Now, at first you have them play it by themselves and they get used to it. If you rarely do this, they get nervous. 'Cause they think
Right.
you're after them. You know what I mean? They
Right.
think you're on the hunt, but if you do it every day, they're like, "Oh, Mr. Lunney's just listening to us." You have them play it, and then you say, "Now do this, this, and this." Have them play it again, said, "Did you like an optometrist, number
Oh,
1
number
or number
1,
2?"
number 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they'll go, "I liked it better the second way." Awesome, well, keep doing those things, and that's already stronger. So you leave them feeling good about they've accomplished something instead of, "That sounds like crap." "What's wrong with you, kid?" And I've heard those words come out of directors' mouths, "That's a terrible sound." That's so they know it's a terrible sound, they're not stupid. They know it's a terrible sound.
I agree.
They're waiting for someone to help them,
Right.
it's like someone telling me that I'm fat. "Yeah, okay, fine, thank you."
All right, Captain Obvious.
That's right. "Mike Lenny, you're fat." "Well, yeah, got any advice?"
All right.
So not to make it all about Mike Lenny, but you know what I mean? But the kids
I
feel
do.
the same way. They know it's a bad sound. It's
Right.
obvious. They just want someone to help them. So if you can get them to blend in, then you pyramid balance the whole thing, and then you've got to really concentrate on pyramid balance also applies to whatever grouping's playing. It might just be woodwind, so now the bass clarinet, or maybe if you're lucky, a contralto, now becomes your tuba player.
Right.
Or if it's just the flutes playing, the second flute part becomes the tuba player. You've got to really
I got
press
it.
that upon them. If they have to understand pyramid balance is not just everything, it's every situation, who has to be the strongest, who has to be the softest. And
Right.
once you accomplish that, if you have good tone, good tuning, good blend, and good balance, if you pick the right music, you will have a great ensemble and you will do well at contest.
That's
I can't
awesome.
see any other way about it. But there's other things to be concerned about.
Okay.
Okay, so we've done that. Let's talk about articulation. I talked to you about modeling articulation and kids model it and we do marcato, staccato, lifted, whatever, we have all that going on and we just I model it for them. And then after they get used to it, I have students model it, so they can model the different articulations. So here's kind of my basic breakdown. And this is a very broad brush I'm painting with right here. But if you want a division 4, then you only have one articulation. That sets me up in my mind that this band is not a strong group because they only have one articulation. If they play everything slow part, fast, high, low, strong, whatever, everything's one articulation. If you want a division 3, have 2 articulations, long and short. then you're headed for a Division 3,
Right.
okay? And that's a very broad brush, so people, you can send me the hate mail, go for it, send it to me, okay? A Division 2, slightly above average, you have 3 noticeable articulations: long, short, and accented. Now, to be a superior first division band, you have 4 or more noticeable articulations: staccato, legato, tenuto, accent. And then you can get into all variations of that. You can get up to 7, 8 different types of articulation. There's places in my band where there wasn't an articulation. They started the sound with simply air, they did not use their tongue.
Right.
They air started the note, and that's what I wanted in that particular tiny moment. There's places, I hate to say it, but there's places at the end of even in concert band, but especially in marching band, we cut off the note with our tongue.
I care say debt.
Yeah, this is gonna stop with the tongue, and we'll put some cymbals and marching band to cover the release, and it'll sound gorgeous. But even in concert band, there's times, "Hey, I want this, just cut it off with your tongue." So go, "Ta." Just cut it off because someone else picks up and no one will ever notice. Said, and
Right.
I'll tell them, so this is a very extreme exception. Said, generally we don't want to cut off anything with our tongue. But if you want to have a really, your articulation skills are at a high level, you'll have more of a chance of being competitive and you'll have a better band program. And the kids will enjoy playing. Even
Right.
beginners pick up on that. Beginners by the end of the year, even if they've only gotten to line 16 in the beginner band book, they could probably still, you could show them how to play staccato, legato, tenuto, and accent.
It's funny.
You can teach them that, and they might only know 16 lines, but man, you're far ahead of the guy that says, I did all of book 2. Great. Do the kids sound like crap? Do they not articulate the same? Do they not, so there's some people go for the quantity over quality method, but I've always been a proponent of, I don't care how many notes you learn in beginner band until you can do good tone and good articulation and good balance and blend. And once you can do those, then let's turn on the afterburner and
Right.
let's go through as much of the book as we can. But otherwise it's a hopeless thing.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I don't have
So
much to add to that, my brother.
yeah, not much to articulate about that. The next thing is phrasing, and again, this all goes back to developing skills that are generalized. If your kids don't play one type of phrase correctly, I'm betting there are lots of phrases they're dropping, and the most common thing is dropping phrases. And, and, uh, and usually, I mean, it's not rocket science, they just need to breathe deeper.
Sure. Or explain
Because
what the
most
phrase
tuning.
is.
Yeah, explain what the phrasing, explain also that the phrase, even though we're talking right now about where we're breathing and how we're breathing, the phrase is not all about the breath mark,
Right.
and something as simple as, in a crescendo, 75% of the crescendo must happen in the last 25% of the time allotted. And the kids are going, I didn't know there's going to be math in this. The same thing with the decrescendo.
But it's
Really
just
good bands are, go ahead.
no, it's just the same thing. If I'm having a conversation with you and I stop and breathe at a weird place, or I don't understand how to get all the way through a complete statement, it may not be the same thing you're talking about, but
Oh, it
it's
is.
very
It
it's
is.
very awkward.
And I
W
equate that to phrases or sentences.
Right. You're having a conversation.
And a section of the music is a chapter, and the entire
Very
piece
good.
is a
Yep.
book,
Right.
so you have to have the right punctuation, and that's the how you phrase, and even our voices are very sing-songy, you
Right.
know what I mean? And a total tangent. Do you know the most people that have a perfect pitch are in Asia?
Really.
Because their language is so sing-songy.
Mhm, 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 mhm.
They
Yeah.
can say the same word with a different frequency, and it means something different.
Sure.
Isn't that amazing? And
That's
I don't
crazy.
speak Mandarin and I don't speak Korean. Obviously, I wish I did. That'd be really a cool skill. But I've heard people speak, and it's like, I can understand that now because they have a real affinity to hearing pitch in relation to how their voice is when they're a little tiny toddler.
That's
So they
great.
start to develop incredible relative pitch and a lot of them perfect pitch.
That's
Isn't that
crazy.
amazing? That's a whole tangent. We could,
Right.
that's a Mike Lunney coffee room moment right there. Okay. But in the phrasing, if we teach them that, the other thing is, especially with really good bands, when they see a decrescendo, they just immediately play soft because they're over
Alright.
cheap.
Right, right.
And you gotta explain to 'em, "No, no, 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 you do the last part of the decrescendo happens 70 same rule, 75% happens in the last 25% of
Right.
the decrescendo." So if you listen to the Chicago Symphony, that's how they do it. You
Not
know, the
everything's sforzando.
yeah, not everything's sforzando. Yeah,
Or whatever
just
that
give the trumpets mutes, um, but, you just have to teach them how to phrase, and the best way to do that is to play recordings, to model it for them, and just insist that, number 1, in the phrasing, if they do breathe correctly in the right places, and then we shape the phrase. Then we shape the phrase. A really good, solid musician will have underneath a phrase, 1 or 2 extra subtle crescendos, decrescendos, or maybe just make one note a little more prominent.
right.
They put the emphasis on the right syllable.
The emphasis. That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I explain it to them, and they all look at me like they don't understand if the emphasis on the right syllable, so
Right.
but if I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, then you're confused, aren't you? Said musically, it's the same way. You've got to put the emphasis on the right syllable, and people go, "That makes sense. That sounded really musical."
That's funny. That's great. But
The
let me
next
ask
one
you
is
this. I gotta
go
ask you.
ahead.
Gotta ask you.
Okay.
You keep talking about some of this, and it makes my brain spin backwards. Uh, I know that we made a big point out of tone and good sounds, but quite frankly, we can't do good phrasing if we haven't taught them how to have good breath support and make good sounds to start with.
Right. Yeah.
So some of this
Good
is
phrasing with bad tone is like lipstick on a pig.
yeah, but you can't breathe
Yeah,
in the
it
right
doesn't
places if
work.
you don't know how to support and how to do that. I mean, you can't manipulate something you don't know how to do.
Right. And that's
Maybe that's
something
what I'm
we
trying to
as
say.
teachers start to ignore because we wanna play harder music.
Right.
We get caught up chasing notes, and the kids are chasing notes, and there's lots of crying going on, and it's
Weeping and wailing and gnashing
yeah,
of teeth.
and that's just the director. They go to their office and just stare at the wall for 30 minutes, because like, "What have I done?"
What am I doing?
So yeah, so you've gotta those basics just have to happen. They just
Okay,
have
sorry.
to happen.
So back to you were about to make your next point.
Yeah, and the other ones are just, more common, and we generally do this a lot as all directors. Correct note length. Most students play the beginning and middle of notes perfectly fine. The end of notes are usually a problem. Now, that doesn't say that there could be problems earlier, but usually those releases, that's where where lots of problems happen. Um, and uh, and I've been told this before by people, and I think it's true. The most obvious mistakes in music are always on long tones and rest. That's where most mistakes are discernible by the audience and by people listening. So if you're playing it, that's the end of the note. Think about that. So a long tone, you're hearing the end of the note. If it's before a rest, you're hearing the end of the note, even if it's a quarter note staccato. You hear the end of the note because it has a quarter rest after it.
Sure.
So we've got to really focus on that. When your band's warming up, are you insisting they play notes for full value? Are they doing concert F around the room and leaving big holes between sections when the whole purpose of it is intensity to each, you know, to go
Right.
from one section to another? Are they going through the motions? Or are they really working the system? We want them to work the system. Okay. Concentrate on absolute note length and insist on it at all times, whether it be a warm up, any of the repertoire, or any exercises. Note length is really important because it makes a band high definition in sound. You know,
Right. I got it.
they're HD at that point, they're 4K, at that point, where they can play with good balance and blend, but if they don't articulate and don't stop notes correctly, then it just all sounds fuzzy. It's like watching football from 1975
Right. It's muddy.
on
Yeah.
TV. Yeah, just muddy. Okay. And then your basic scales and note reading. The most important scale your students can learn is the chromatic scale. And it's the one we kind of avoid. And when I do beginner band, that's the scale I started with. It was a chromatic scale, 1 octave, concert B flat to high concert B flat. And we just learned the chromatic scale and learned the chromatic fingerings for the woodwind instruments. So it didn't become something that was just an add-on later. They just saw it as, hey, that's what we did in the third week. So this must be how all clarinets do it. And so it's interesting because I'll go clinics sometimes a high school band, and the clarinets don't know the chromatic fingerings. They don't know there's 2 ways to play an E flat. So they get this flap, 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 or they use the same
Right.
pinky,
Right. Right.
to change notes. And it's just we get caught up in what we're doing. But make that a part of the chromatic scale. Just make sure they know. at least the scales that are most prominent with our activity. I mean, it'd be great if they learned 48 major minor scales, 2 octaves with arpeggios, but let's be
Right.
realistic. Certainly we can learn E flat, B flat, and
They could
F.
do that in college.
Yeah, yeah, they can do that in college, and it'd be great to learn them all, but, 99.9% of our music is in 3 keys. Yeah, it
Right.
really
I
is.
get it.
So if they can understand that, you're doing great. And the other one is rhythms. Don't skimp on rhythm reading. Some students learn a piece by listening to those around them because their rhythm vocabulary is so poor. It's like monkey see, monkey do. And that just relates into bad balance, bad blend, bad tone quality because all they're trying to do is grunt through their horn at the appropriate time as the other person's playing
Stop.
through their horn. They're just like grunting the real
Gorilla band.
yeah, you're like, "Oh, come on, guys." And it's they do it because they don't have any rhythm vocabulary, so,
But again,
again
technology, we used to have counting cards.
oh, yeah, and then came rhythm slides.
And
Remember
but I
rhythm
mean,
slides?
with
Chicka,
with
chicka, chicka.
smart screens all over the place, it's not really hard to put a rhythm up that people can go, "All right, we're all gonna play this rhythm on concert F. Here we go."
Yeah, yeah. I really like the old and I know I had an old set of them, those rhythm slides from Rhythm Bee, and now it's done, through the internet, and it's really cool. But I really love the fact that the kids couldn't see the slide when the slide was moving. You know what I mean? And there's a thing you could buy that I put on the front of it called a tachyoscope. And a tachyoscope, you could set the amount of time the slide was on the screen. So you could go chunk and it go shunk, and the
That's
kids would
funny.
have to see it and they have to play that rhythm. And then about beat 3, you'd go shunk and do the next slide. And they'd have to in their brain actually process that,
Sure.
okay, I'm finishing the one I saw and I'm getting ready to play the one I just saw. And that's how we actually read music.
Right.
And
You know,
so
it's
that helped. Yeah.
it's weird, I don't know if this is relatable or not, but when I was in elementary school, they had machines. I guess they wanted us all to speed read. I don't know why, but it would only
Mhm. I know exactly what you're
show you a
talking
line
about.
at a time, and you had to take a test. How much of that did you,
That's right.
understand, or how much of that did you actually grasp? And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I might
I
be wrong, but I think it was part of the SRA
yeah,
program.
yeah, 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 and I was,
Scholastic Reading something. It
and
was,
all these different colors of levels,
oh,
and
yeah. Man, I was proud to be platinum, man.
oh, man, I was a
Big
happy
time.
guy
Got to go
because
to a skating party and eat pizza, man. It was worth that 10,000 hours of labor.
one of the
But
few
yeah,
times
you're
in my
right though.
life, I was proud that mom made me read every day all the time, but
That's right. Isn't that cool? But I love that process, and I'm sure you can do the same thing with Rhythm Bee. I'm a real proponent of that process. The
right,
Rhythm Bee is a great thing I've used with bands, but nothing beat those old slides. And it was the same company. They just moved with technology and
sure. But
understand
teaching
that.
people how to read ahead is a big deal,
Yeah.
but
And according to the same things, dynamics, similar to articulations, you got to have
whoa,
noticeable dynamics.
whoa, don't dynamics.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna throw anyone under the bus on this one, but I remember going to clinic one band like 3 weeks or 4 weeks before contest, and the director said, "Hey, we've got all the notes worked out, we just gotta put the music in now." And I was like, "What?" "Well,
I
we,
told you not to make me laugh.
yeah, sorry,
Ah,
but yeah, we've got all the notes figured out, but we were just hoping you could, like, make it more musical." And I
could you actually
realized,
turn this into a music?
yeah, they had done no dynamics, no different articulations, and they thought that was a process like putting a roof on a house. You just go step by step and you just plug it in and then it's done at the end.
It's almost
And
like coding.
yeah, and we just had a really good conversation after that rehearsal with the director about, this all happens at the same time. That you
Right.
don't learn all the notes and then you learn how to balance and then
You
you
don't
learn how to
input the
blend
data, and then
and
you
then you then you get to add in the dynamics.
that's
And
funny.
again, if you want a fifth division, have one dynamic.
Here's a
Have a really weak soft dynamic that just sounds pitifully below tone quality, or just rail on us, man. Just go ahead and play fortissimo the whole time. And a band, and I will not say the name, they had their principal decided after the band director was released. The principal had been in band, so he decided he was gonna take the band to contest. So all the clarinets on their concert F at the beginning when he had them warm up, and this guy was like all swag. You know what I mean? He goes, and the clarinets all put their horns up and pointing the bells straight at the director. and
That's
it
great.
sounded just like one of those Middle Eastern military bands. Yeah, I mean, it was like, "Sunrise on the Guinea Farm" was Bill Wood's greatest quote, yeah,
That's
and
funny.
we just, like we were judges looking at each other like, "Are we being punked?" Because the band didn't do anything right because of the, swag and the narcissist behavior of the principal. He
I'm
just told them how
telling
to do
you.
everything wrong, and that was a 5th division, it was a 5.55. And I'm sure he was pissed.
Sure.
I know what I'm doing. Those guys don't know what they're doing. And we're like, oh my God, those poor kids. And this is a band that then 5 years later, they were an honor band,
Oh, wow.
the TMEA. The right director came in, they were an honor
Sure.
band. So kids, they, I know people disagree with this, but I'm a firm believer kids do what you tell them. Sometimes you have to push a little hard. So, but
Sure.
they'll eventually they know when things are getting better, so they'll definitely do what you tell them to do. Even if it's getting worse, it's easier just for them just to fit in the system
I'm
and
telling
not
you
argue with
this.
the band director. Just,
I'm
"I guess that's
jumping
what we do." Yeah.
jumping off my my mental psychological tangent here, but I'm telling you the human brain craves, order.
Mhm.
The human brain craves and our soulless person craves, everything being in its place and appreciates the beauty of peace and correctness, and I'm not saying you don't create chaotic moments out of music so you can resolve it to peace, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
If
do.
nothing if nothing fits, if the tone, intonation, length of notes, if it's all chaos all the time, there is no peace,
Right.
and nobody wants to do it.
It's just noise.
Right.
It's just
Sorry.
noise.
Got me
No,
up
no,
on
you're
my
right. And
bully
that first
pulpit real
part you
quick.
said was a beautiful, definition of music. We want everything in its place, orderly, and to be peaceful. And that's the good definition of music. The contrast between sound and silence for me is the simplest definition of music.
And,
Yeah.
the saying in music calms the savage beast because that's what music does. It's not notes on the page necessarily. Where do those notes on the page lead us? And do we find the soulish resolution of a peaceful appreciation for what, gotta
Oh,
stop. But,
yeah. No, you're on a roll. Go for it. Go for
eh,
it. But you're right. In human society, music was meant to help us deal with life. Whether it was a caveman, whether it was a medieval priest, whether it was a Renaissance scientist, whether it was an industrial pioneer, whether it was a tech guy that probably still listens to music when they work on coding. You know what I mean? But there's something about it. It's almost like a soothing um, medical thing. You know what I mean? It's a psychological thing, and and that's how we approach kids, and we do all these things correctly, and they can deal with life better.
and Mike, it's
Yeah.
to the point I did this experiment the other day. I doubted it, but they have figured out that, uh, sonically, you can calm a lot of mental stress when, they know how to manipulate sound now, this was specifically targeted towards, hyperactivity or ADHD, or
Mhm.
that they can create sonically in a stereo situation things that allow your brain to motor back down and calm down, and I know that's what music does.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
the same time, I've found myself
If it's
right?
done well, yeah.
Have found
Not
myself
perfect, but done well.
crying at music and not even knowing why because it's touching me somewhere in the right way.
Yeah.
And so all that sounds dramatic, I suppose, but we can't get there without tone, without balance, without and if all I gotta be so careful. I know what the rubric says, but if all we're teaching is the notes on the page, we're not teaching music.
Right. And on top of that, you will not be successful at contest because
Right.
the rubrics will be against you. Because
This
it as
sounds
a
like Hunger
judge.
Games.
Yeah, the
May the
rubrics will be
rubric ever
against
be
you.
in your favor.
Yeah, yeah, and with dynamics, if you want a Division 4, have 2 noticeable dynamics, loud or soft, okay? If you want a Division 3, now make recordings of your band in rehearsal, and then you be truthful. Listen to your band and see if you can figure out different noticeable dynamic levels. Division 3, soft, medium, loud. Division 2, soft, medium loud, loud. Okay? Superior, 5 or more noticeable dynamic levels. Pianissimo, piano, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, fortissimo, sforzando, forte piano, etc. If all those are evident, be honest when you band directors out there, record your band in a rehearsal. Just don't even tell them you're recording, just record the band, listen to it later, and if you can't hear 5 levels of dynamics contrasted in your band, then you're not on a first division path. You're not. Okay. So then your job is simply just make it happen. I mean, that sounds simplistic, but it's true. Just approach them with we've got to do this way. MP does not mean mighty powerful.
That's
F
funny.
does not mean fart.
Unless you're a trombone player.
Yeah. Now, MF, no, we're not going to go there.
So
Samuel Jackson moment.
my instant argument with you is, am I supposed to be looking for pieces of music that have 5 dynamic levels written into it? Or do I understand that music has dynamic levels whether they're written on the page or not?
I would hope you would understand the latter. That the judges are very impressed and audiences are very impressed. But let's just talk about adjudication. Um, when there's more dynamics being presented on the stage than are on your score. It's like I worked with a little middle school band, and then they went to contests, and I kind of structured a portion of it to where different sections of the bands had different dynamic phrasing. You know what I mean? Where the low brass crescendo, decrescendo at every measure, upper woodwinds crescendo 2 measures, decrescendo 2 measures. Percussion did 4 measure crescendo, 4 measure decrescendo, all in this big like fugue section, and
Yeah.
all 3 judges mentioned that.
Cool. Okay.
Think about that, because, then she took it and said, "Okay, we're gonna do this," and then they said, "Oh, I really enjoyed the multiple levels of dynamics in this section of the piece that's not on the score." And so I'm glad you brought up that point because directors tend to, think that it's, what they see on the page
It's
has
the
to be
composer's
replicated.
responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually composers either don't give you what they'll do. I'll tell you, this is the truth. I saw my composer friends don't kill me, but they write too many articulations. I pulled out some pieces that the whole thing, every note's accented. I mean, what's the point of that? That's like that's a rude aunt that's at your family reunion that talks loud all the time,
Fran
you know?
Drescher.
Yeah, he gets old pretty quick. And they on the opposite side, they generally don't write in near enough dynamic structure. They just give you a couple of crescendos and decrescendos, but, you've got to add those in. And, in clinics, I spend a lot of time just saying, "Get your pencil." And I say, Do this, do this, do that." And then I let the director decide. And I tell the kids that, now we're going to put this in, just put it in pencil, real lightly. And if your director likes it, great. If they don't like it, that's fine. I'm pretty thick skinned. It's a difference of opinion. But I do know one thing for sure. Something needs to happen. Every note leads to another note or comes away from a note prior to it. That has to happen because flatline is never a good thing, especially if you're in the hospital. Okay, flatline never is a good thing, and we don't want our music to be flatline where there's not any dynamic structure, it just goes flatline all the way
Right.
across,
Right. I
and
agree.
some of the music's written as it looks on the page that that's what the composer wanted. That's not what the composer wanted. They gave us leeway to do it, and, I don't know, it's an old argument, so how much should the composer write? I've got a really good friend, Luke McMillan, who writes marching shows and does a great job. And sometimes we get in the discussion where he'll say, "Hey, listen to this, whatever," and said, "What ideas do you have?" He's a smart man. He reaches out to lots of people, and because he wants his product to be really, really good. And then I'll say, "Well, I'd probably market this way, this way, this way, and do this." And then he'll come back, and he's right. He'll come back and say, "Well, now we're getting into it's the composer's job to educate the kids."
Uh,
But shouldn't the director do that? And he's
right.
right. So there's that fine balance between how much the composer writes and how much we interpret on
Extrapolate.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
extrapolate from that. Like, I don't know. That's another tangent. But yeah, with dynamics, it has to happen. The last thing is this sounds real obvious, but practice. I think
What?
that
We're
I think that
talking
yeah,
practice?
yeah, and I think it's really a situation that, so many band kids don't practice at all outside the band hall. I mean, That's kind
That's
of a given. Quiet part out loud, they
we
don't yeah.
pretend that's the quiet part, but we all
Yeah,
know it.
yeah, we all know it, but I found that, I would have more my music got better in the band, in the ensemble, when I taught the kids how to practice. I didn't just say practice, I would teach them how to practice. Not that they should practice, but how? Do they actually have a set of techniques and procedures that allow them to succeed on their own? Do they have a and I'll do it in band, I'll say, "We're gonna pretend like this is an individual practice session for all 70 of you, and we're gonna start with our little tiny warm up, and then we're gonna play something and then really that's challenging to us as a band, because that should be the modules within your own practice, and then I want you to evaluate what you just did, and then at the end, we're gonna play some music that we all know really, really well, so when the practice session is over, it feels good,
Right.
and it makes us wanna come back the next day, and, I tell you a book out there, it's called How to Make First Chair. It's a
Okay.
little tiny book. I mean, it's like it's the
Pamphlet.
size of like an iPhone. You know what I mean? That's the size of it, and it's just a little tiny you can get it on Amazon, but it's by
It's a
Robert.
it's a tract.
Yeah, I mean, it
Preaching the
only has
gospel
like
of practice.
but it has like 40 pages in it, but it's like a little tiny thing, it's like, you're evangelized now. But it goes through just every single step and every kid that wanted to I had a set of like 10 or 15 of them because they were just a couple bucks each.
Sure.
And then I would check them out of my office of kids. Hey, I want to try for the all region band. Here, take this little book. And it tells you step by step how to mark your music, how to
Wow.
practice, how to do everything, how to set up a goal system. And really intelligent kids, they can just read through and go, "Oh, this is how you practice." And I would teach the band how to practice using that book and
Wow.
not tell them that. They thought it
Sure.
was coming from me because I wanted them to think I was really
Dare say
intelligent.
because I'm demonstrating my genius.
That's right, that's exactly right, and I was just copying off of someone else's work, you know? But if you can teach them how to do that, it would work well, okay? Um, but I would highly suggest that whoever just a friend, a clinician, to kind of a closing thought, to have them come and listen to your band when it's early in the process, and it's a bitter pill to swallow because we know things are going wrong, and the band director knows things are going wrong, but, sometimes directors get to where they think they're too sick to go see the doctor,
Yeah. We've had that
so
conversation. Right.
yeah, and that works, and I think one of the greatest examples of the opposite of that, a friend of mine who teaches here in Abilene at a listening session brought his, recordings of his band playing, and it was not really great. But we went through the process and we said, "Okay, this is what we need to do," and then later the next day, I was at their band hall, and then, he goes, "Yeah, I want you to know, so we had the fire alarm go off in the middle of our recordings, we had this many kids who were gone." Said, "I almost backed out of the session, but I thought, 'Pff, I've recorded it, let's go see what we can find out.'" Isn't that a cool example?
Yep.
The
Yeah.
opposites, that, all this weirdness happened, and it was like, a late start for the school day, and it was just all kinds of mess, and then he said, "Nope, I recorded it, it is what it is. Let's find out let's put these guys to the test."
Right. But Mike, I'm gonna tell you this too, that we've had this conversation, and if you will not share where you are, then you have hit the ceiling. You will not go any higher.
Mhm.
If you will not allow somebody else to offer constructive, if you hate the word criticism, advice,
Yeah,
if
and I
if
tell you
you everybody knows something's wrong, but if you don't know how to pinpoint what it is, you gotta get somebody in there that's done it enough times to go, "Here's what's happening."
yes, and I'll tell you, if you're a band director if you're a band director and you have the luxury in marching band of having someone who does your drill and you buy music from somebody, from a company or a composer or whatever, you know what? You're paying for their opinion.
Right.
They love getting videotape.
Yep.
Yeah, they love it. Now, our concert band situation, generally, it's an established list, but those guys, I've reached out to them before. And just called him when I did a Francis Macbeth piece, and he was still with us, and his, sister lived in Abilene and was married to Warren Thaxton.
Yep.
She called him Frankie instead of Francis Macbeth, and I would I ended up getting his number somehow, and, at Ouachita University, and he was so pleasant. I'd call and say, "No, we're doing this piece, and this isn't working right here." He'd go, "Oh, yeah, I think I kinda wrote that wrong. So just
Mhm.
take the horn part and change it to this, and the trombones, take them out there. Just don't even have trombones right there, so it doesn't sound right." And it's like, "Well, how come you haven't changed it?" "Well, it's all in print, and, it's not on Finale."
Right,
So, it's the old days, so those guys will I hate to put words in their mouth, but they will answer. They'll
right.
send you, especially if you just send an email. "Hey, I'm having problems in this section. I really enjoy this piece. What advice would you have?" Um, Reach out to those people. If you're buying their arrangements, it's okay to reach out to them. If you're
Right.
marching band, man, send video every week. Make a Google Drive folder and just drop in your Friday performance for all 15 people. I've worked in that situation. It's great.
Once again, what's the worst thing they could say?
That's right. Take their
"Nah,
name
I
off the
don't wanna
Google
help."
Drive and leave Google Drive. Uh,
So, alright. Well, I
if you'll
think my
just
takeaway
do all these impossible things, then
Wow,
you'll
where did
have a
that laugh
really
come
good
from?
band. Yeah.
But I
Just all those
think
impossible things.
takeaways are this: ask for help early,
Mhm.
get somebody to come listen, and somebody you respect. I mean, listen, I'm not saying go get the remedial math teacher to come down and see what they think. Find somebody that knows what they're talking about. Get somebody in early. Don't make the mistake of thinking you don't have time to work on good tone, good balance, all these things that we've talked about today. And really, these kind of snowball, don't they, Mike?
Yeah, they do.
I mean, if you'll dive into the first point, you find yourself going, yeah, but now we got to fix that balance. You're making much better sounds. Now that you're making such good sounds and supporting, we're going to have to work on a little balance here.
Yeah.
It's not like you have to. We talked about time wasters in one of our episodes. It's not like you're going from module to module to module on these points that you made today, but you have to hit that foundational one, and then all the others just kind of pop up, and you go, all right, it's time to address number two. Okay, let's address number three. Okay, based on what you just said, I'm going to put you on the spot. If somebody wants some advice on some of this, surely they can reach out to Mike Lunney at askmike@intunemusic.com,
Yeah.
and we can address some of that stuff. So,
Man, I've got middle school bands in Port Neches Grove down on the coast, and, that I
digging out
evaluate
of
their
snow.
concert. Yeah, digging out of snow, but I did 2 of their pieces and gave them a voice memo of, things I'd work on, and they've only been working on them for 2 weeks. Think about that for a second. So, uh, I love doing that kinda stuff because 'cause I'm just retired and, you know,
Making sure I heard the word right vowel sound there.
retired, but the other one applies too.
We're diving off the political correct cliff.
More of an idiot savant, that would be the proper term. I only have one skill set.
Ah, man, when I am trying not to laugh, I make the weirdest laughs in the world, dude.
Over there
Mike, I
cackling at me.
appreciate you. I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, it's been fun.
And do me a favor, as you go through this busy season in your life, remember what we preach. Keep that mental health factor always going. Don't overdo it, brother.
That's right, that's right.
So, appreciate you, man.
You bet. We'll check you later, man.